Competition is fierce in the used car arena, so how can you ensure that your pre-owned inventory stands above the rest? Success starts with the quality of your leads. Auto Trader for Independents offers products that help drive high-quality leads for independent dealers like you.
Welcome to Used Car News Podcast. Used Car News is your top source for fast and reliable news that car dealers can rely on for this evolving industry. Here are this month's top stories. CarMax reports sales dip. Subprime lending platform debuts e-contracts and wholesale prices dip in June. But first, here's our special guest, Steve Levine from Ignite Consulting Group.
Welcome. This is Jeffrey Balant, managing editor at Used Car News. And of course, welcome to the podcast. With everything going on in the car business today and a big elephant in the room with CDK, we've got a great guest, Steve Levine, partner at Ignite Consulting in Texas and in Florida. Steve, we've known you throughout the years. If you're not a vendor in the exhibit halls at these conferences, you're a speaker or a panelist or a moderator. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you having me on. Yes, there are so many things going on in our industry right now.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's both good and busy to be a compliance expert right about now. So let's start. We just saw each other last week at the recording of this. We saw each other just a few days ago in Vegas at NIDA, and you did talk compliance there. But let's talk the elephant in the room, which is CDK Global. Ironically, 10 days after the official launch date of the new safeguard rules on June 9th, 10 days later, CDK Global, a huge software provider and DMS provider to dealerships, 15,000 dealerships, as a matter of fact, across North America, was hacked. And now what we're learning, what I've heard recently now, Steve, is that it was a ransomware attack. I know this is something right up your wheelhouse. Can you tell us a bit what you think about it and I guess what your perspective is on it?
Well, the thing that frightens me about this, I mean, this is a large company, like you said, that tens of thousands of customers. You know, I used to work for a DMS, but we were much smaller, only 1,000 customers. Well, when you're talking that this many dealerships involved and the impact it had on business, it is frightening. I'm afraid that this is going to kind of be the wake-up call that I've been waiting for. I talk to a lot of dealers, a lot of folks around the country, and I kind of think that folks haven't taken safeguards as seriously as they need to in some respects. That this has been on the books for a while now, and I still talk to folks, and they've done some, they haven't done others. Maybe they're relying on internal resources instead of choosing to incur the extra expense and go outside. When you see a company that size with those kind of resources get hit, yes, I think it makes everybody realize. Yeah, somebody made a great comment last week at NIADA that these hackers didn't turn into experts overnight. They've been practicing on the smaller guys to hone their skills to get to where they could penetrate these big outfits. I tell folks, I don't care whether you're selling 5 cars a month, 50 cars a month, a couple of 100 cars a month. If you've got car sales in your name, if you've got finance in your name, we offer credit, you're a target because the bad guys know that you have that personally identifiable customer information.
And you spoke on compliance. You did a panel, I believe, on compliance and then one on e-contracts or whatever. How does this fit in? I mean, it's funny because this kind of happened either at the same time or after NIDA, kind of right in the middle of it. What were some of the things you were talking about that come to mind as we deal with the CDK thing and, of course, looking ahead?
Well, it was kind of interesting because it literally happened right before our compliance panel. And our compliance panel was supposed to be kind of a general discussion about compliance management systems and operations in dealerships and how to train teams and things like that. And then we started the safeguards conversation. It probably took up at least half of the discussion, and that wasn't planned. That was just as a result of this big event hitting the news. When you get a security breach that size, that kind of company, it grabs attention, and people had all these questions. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of people in the room, that was the first time that they've thought about safeguards in a good while. And, my message for the past at least 2 years has been, we've got to do better, that this is a very real thing. And I tell people it's very simple. If you are accepting credit applications, you're inviting the public to give you sensitive customer information. You've got a duty to protect that information. Yes. And the government has placed a big burden on you. And if you're not taking the steps to satisfy that burden, you're in jeopardy. And I really think this is the type of thing that could be a bet the business type of jeopardy, because, now what the FTC did recently is they said, if you have a security breach of 500 or more customer records and it's unencrypted data, that you've got to report that to the FTC. And when I read that the first time, I immediately, in my mind, I said to myself, if I'm a small operator, it doesn't take me long to get 500 records.
Exactly.
If I'm financing 10 deals a month and I'm rejecting 10 deals a month, it doesn't take very long at all to get those 500 records. And I'm going to have to make a decision at some point. Am I going to self-report myself to the FTC and put that in the public sphere? Or do I take the chance, if I don't report that and it becomes knowledge, they can wipe me out?
Boy, you've hit on all the points right there, because one, like you said, if CDK with all the resources they have can be hacked, then everybody can be hacked. We know that. But the other thing is, that's one of the stories I was reading today about big time dealers having to report to the SEC or the FTC regarding what's happening to them. And you think about, CDK is Penske, Lithia, AutoNation, Group One. They're everybody. It's just unbelievable. And it is something for folks listening, if you haven't been to these conventions, and this is obviously one of the big reasons to go to, is people like Steve, or you listen to lawyers like Hudson Cook or other compliance officials. They're telling you that you would have known about stuff like this a year or two ago. And the thing is, it's exactly what Steve says. You think that you don't really fall in that category. And like Steve says, with the credit apps you're taking, it adds up quick. And you absolutely do fall into the realm of this safeguards rule and other things, because you're doing more than you think. Between the rejections and the other paperwork, you're falling under this compliance, correct?
You really are. And I tell people, you need to look at it like this. And my view comes from, I talk to a lot of third parties that do IT, that do information security. And I've got a lot of clients that fall into this, that they maybe have one IT person on staff who pretty much is in charge with making sure that the computers work, making sure that password changes, connectivity, things like that. They're not necessarily trained in information security and vulnerability. And that's the mistake I think many dealers are making. They think, well, I've got an IT department. I don't need to spend money. I don't need to go outside. And you really have to ask yourself, okay, but does my IT resource have the kind of expertise when it comes to vulnerability and information security? And are they running robust phishing exercises? And are they looking for penetrations at a daily level, or in some organizations, hour by hour level, to make sure that this isn't happening? And I think a lot of dealers, they rely on their internal folks, or if they rely on somebody from the outside, it's somebody that really, their business is connectivity and hardware. It's not cybersecurity.
Yeah, that's great. Because I think about a few years ago at NADA, they had an FBI guy talking about ransomware attacks and talking about just little things like somebody got caught, one of the bookkeepers, because it was a big dealership and they got so many purchase orders all the time, approving purchase order, and one of those got through and it turned out to be a phishing effort. It was a huge problem. But like you said, it's not just IT, the back end stuff. They're doing stuff to penetrate. They're doing stuff to trick you. And we've all seen it on our emails. And it's like, and they're pretty clever. I always think of, I'll go through my email, delete, and then something catches my eye and slows me down. I'm like, ooh, they almost got me, just slowing me down to look at it twice. And I think that's where the issues of these third parties and these expertise in compliance, like you guys, help dealers, because it's more than, like you said, it's more than just some technical background stuff.
I encourage the folks listening, if you're a dealer and you're on the fence, how active you want to be in terms of protecting yourself, Do you really want to deal with a situation where you have a security event and it goes viral on Facebook or other social media, and you've got customers coming out of the woodwork asking questions? And that's the type of thing. If it happens, it could really impact how you appear in your marketplace. So I just encourage folks, for very little effort, you can make a big impact, but you have to put in some effort.
And folks, there are lots of providers of this type of information, like Ignite Consulting. But since Steve was on, you have to check out. He does provide a monthly webinar on the top issues of the time. And he really, what I like about you, Steve, is you talk to your clients are regular dealers, regular people listening to this podcast right now who deal with regular problems, and you're able to tell them, the blind spots and the things to look out for. And definitely, I mean, just something like that, a monthly webinar just puts it inside your head, reminding you, hey, I got to keep an eye on this, or I got to remember what I'm looking for. Now, on top of that, we just got through the NIDA. And again, you mentioned your panel on compliance, but you guys do an annual Compliance Unleashed conference each year in Texas. You did this, it was in May, correct?
Right. We do it every May around the third week of the month.
What were some of the issues that came up during this conference? And obviously, this was pre-CDK, but obviously these were safeguards and things like this you've been talking about anyways. But what were the issues that you were hearing from your attendees, and what were you trying to impress upon them?
Well, we spend a lot of time working on our curriculum because we think we understand the issues and the challenges pretty well. So this year we focused on the CARS rule and
right.
Safeguards. We had some really interesting classes on how you deal with regulators, how you deal with plaintiffs' lawyers, how you respond to these debt avoidance scheme letters that have become so popular, credit reporting type issues, a whole bunch of issues regarding sales and advertising and ways to position your website without getting into trouble. One thing that it seems like every year it comes up more and more are sales folks creating unintended liability for the dealership by things that they're putting out there on social media. And let me tell you.
Give an example.
So for example, a salesperson takes a picture of a vehicle, puts it on their personal Facebook page, says, hey, I could put you in this car for X dollars. I could put you in this car for, X dollars a month. Come see me. And that there's been several times where I've had to work with the dealership and present their case to the state, because the state's saying, well, your sign's in the background, it's your car, this is your salesman, that therefore it's your violations.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So one of the things that we really try to get our clients to do is have a social media policy for your sales personnel. Tell them what they can and can't say. Give them examples of how you want them to position it. And if you do all that, if somebody steps over the line, at least you could say, we tried. I had that case a couple of years ago. Luckily, my client had the salesperson sign a policy. Salesperson ignored the policy, but the regulator didn't find them because they said, you know what, you tried. You did everything you could. We're not going to hold you liable for this.
Competition is fierce in the used car arena, so how can you ensure that your pre-owned inventory stands above the rest? Success starts with the quality of your leads. Auto Trader for Independents offers products that help drive high-quality leads for independent dealers like you.
I remember that a previous person discussing these things mentioned the point that you're never going to be bulletproof, but by showing that you're making it was a guy from Reynolds & Reynolds. Remember, and Terry had talked about the idea of if you try something, it's better than trying nothing. And it does protect you. It does protect you by showing at least that you've made this effort, that you're not just, a cowboy out there.
Yeah. I think that the old saying really rings true. I don't need to be faster than the bear. I need to be faster than the guy I'm running next to.
That's great. That is absolutely great. Yeah. And it is interesting, though, because like you said, a salesman doing that thinks they're just doing their job. They think they're helping the dealership, sell cars, and not realizing that they're putting them in jeopardy.
That's right. And one of the other things that comes to mind and that type of thing, and I talk to dealers about this all the time, a lot of dealers let their sales folks put the customer information in their cell phones. and they're having their own private text conversations with customers. Well, when that salesperson leaves, that they've basically got the old Rolodex in their cell phone, and the dealership may not have all that information. So that's an important thing to control as well. And
Yes.
I have different clients that are willing to do different things in that situation. And, I think you can make different arguments for how strict you want to be, but at least you're consciously making that decision, and it's not being made for you because you just don't want to think about it.
Correct. I got you. Did you attend, or were you familiar with the FTC or CFPB presentations at NIDA this last week?
Yes.
Okay.
And if I'm a dealer attending those presentations, I'm really concerned.
Sure.
And I'll tell you why.
Uh-huh.
It's not just the message. Of course, these are zealots that buy the arguments that they're making, but they are smart, they are articulate, they are
Yes.
clever, and that's a scary thing to sit there in the audience and listen to them basically saying, and a lot more words than this, but we're coming after you. We think there's a
Yeah.
lot of bad actors.
Yeah. It's funny because all they hear is the bad stuff. They're hearing from complainants, and it's funny because when I'm listening to them, they talking about dealers and talking about what they learn. And the worst is they'll tell you at these conferences that they represent themselves, but they don't speak for the FTC or they don't speak for the CFPB. I'm like, but how does that help you? That doesn't help you at all. I mean, and when you'll ask a specific instance, they'll say, well, we don't deal in hypotheticals. But if the only way that you can understand the rule as a dealer is a hypothetical. Okay, so if I do this, does that go against the rule? And they don't answer the question. Really, the guy, and they're really kind of vague in the language, which really hangs you guys out to dry.
It was frustrating for me when they published the CARS rule. That they have that dealer guide, and
Right.
and I don't think the dealer guide goes into sufficient detail.
Mhm.
For instance, they tell you what express informed consent isn't, when they could have really promulgated a form and said, we believe that if a dealer uses this form, this would satisfy our express informed consent
Yes,
criteria. But they didn't do that.
that's my point. Exactly. They don't, they're vague. So, and then you can't, if you ask, well, does this qualify? They don't really answer the question. It makes me frustrated. If I were a dealer, I'd be very frustrated because I'm trying to comply. Help me to comply. But if you're not going to tell me this is how to comply, it really leaves you guessing.
Well, it's funny because during the FTC session, and the FTC has previously said that, well, we think the dealers that are doing things correctly, this isn't a big change for them. It's not a departure.
Right.
It's not going to take any more time. It's not going to take any more money. That's what they've said. And then somebody brought up an example of an advertising strategy that is legal today that wouldn't work under the new CARS rule. And, well, there's no answer. We don't deal with hypotheticals.
Right. And it's funny, all you compliance people, and there's a couple others there at the conference, said the same thing. You don't understand. This is not a little change. It's not an inexpensive change. It really is a big one. The other thing.
It's a huge change. I mean, it is. I've been doing this over 30 years. This is the biggest change in the sale of cars, the financing of cars that I've seen in my entire career, if this goes through. And the only thing I compare it to, and this predates me, is Truth in Lending Act and the changes that brought upon the industry. So it's that big.
Yes. Well, so again, that we know that that's being fought in court by the NADA and the TADA in Texas. But I know that that's a big hill to climb. I know that's going to be very difficult for them to change because they feel like they're moving forward. I mean, the FTC gal basically said they're moving forward. She sounded very confident that in regards to this court case.
Oh, they're moving forward, and I think it's going to be quick. Like if the court rules in their favor, it's going to be real quick. And I think that their defense is going to be, when we put the pause on it because of the court case, we told you it wasn't going to be a long pause. You shouldn't have stopped working on any of this stuff.
Right.
So
right.
now you've got very little time. And I think part of that's driven by the election. Part of that's driven by some other forces that are out there.
Now, at the CFPB guide, to switch gears for a second, they did this big report, released this big report on negative equity and talking about, the patterns of negative equity. People who, and for everybody, most people understand this in the audience, but basically it's somebody comes in with a car that's worth $3,000. They owe $5,000. So they buy a new car and they roll that $2,000 they owe on the extra $2,000 they owe. They roll that into the financing of the new car. Now, when I heard this report, they say, "Oh, we're just doing research into the market," and I'm thinking, no, they're not. I don't believe they just do research just for the sake of research. And my question is, and I'm not a dealer and I'm not a compliance guy, Steve, but my thought is, are they looking to target negative equity, like to either not allow negative equity financing or to limit it? I mean, what is your feeling on that?
I don't dare try to get inside their minds and figure out their motivations, but I do believe that the way they look at it, look, there are some horror stories involving negative equity.
Right.
And they tend to take those horror stories, lump them together and say, okay, we've got a problem we need to fix. And look, negative equity has been around a long time.
Right.
It also enables people to get in newer vehicles. I found a lot of the material that they published to be pretty logical. Yeah, people that make less money have more negative equity. People with worse credit scores have more negative. Yes, correct. That's logical. That doesn't mean that it's a bad act. That doesn't mean that it's a UDAP. That doesn't mean that it should be illegal.
I agree. And Steve, I think about when they were the whole idea of like every time they try to, it seems to me every time they try to help struggling people, they hurt them. They don't realize what you will do is you will cut them off from being customers. If they do that, if you reduce it, how else am I going to get something financed? Because like you said, a lot of times outside of that little small window post-COVID, negative equity is the norm. I mean, it really is a lot of times. It's interesting that report even shows people who are buyers of high-line cars are carrying negative equity on those cars.
And look, negative equity in and of itself isn't a dirty word. It's a fact of life. And I think they tend to look at it and demonize it and again, bring up the worst cases. Oh my God, this poor person had to roll $5,000 into their next deal and that increased their payment by so-and-so. But okay, so the alternative was that person shouldn't have gotten a vehicle. Maybe they needed a vehicle.
Right.
Maybe they had another kid, maybe their job situation changed and they needed it. And I don't think this is personal belief. I don't believe it's the government's job to regulate that.
I agree. Absolutely agree. And I think a lot of times, no offense, but we take responsibility away from the actual buyer. Like you said, if there is purposeful non-disclosures or hidden stuff, then obviously the dealers should be held accountable for that. But a lot of times, how much paperwork customers have to go through. They do know that. And a lot of people know, especially people with struggling credit, they know their lot. They know the stuff they have to deal with, and they're okay with it. I think about, to me, the negative, the people who should be in trouble are the guys, and it happened a little bit a few years ago where you've had situations where somebody puts in their advertising, we're going to pay off the loan you owe on your car. Okay, when they're not. They're not paying it off. They're just rolling it over. Now that, to me, is...
That's actionable, and it should be actionable.
Absolutely.
That's horrible conduct.
Yeah, that's because they're literally lying in the advertising or at least misleading at the least. So yeah, I agree with you on both those cases that you should hammer the people that are purposely doing wrong. But I just think every time they come up with some of these rules, like I think, they're going to ban starter interrupts. They're going to ban this. All you're doing is you're going to limit people's choices to buy cars. You're going to hurt the people you're trying to help. And I think the buyer has some responsibility in this as well. So for you, how did the NADA go? Obviously, you ran a couple of sessions. What did you think about it?
I thought it was a really good event. I thought it was run very well. I thought that the classes went into great detail. I really enjoyed it. And of course, getting to see folks, had a lot of clients there that I'd ordinarily not get to see, getting to spend some time with them. That's why we go to these things.
Sure.
This one was kind of a treat for me. I got one of my sessions was with Secure Close, Ace Secure Close, and a couple of dealers talking about electronic contracting. And
they're great. Yeah, I like Ace and the gang there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of their product. and to be able to be on stage with them and kind of dive into what could tend to be a pretty boring legal concept, but having dealers on stage talking about their operational experience with it made it a fantastic session.
Yeah, I always love dealer panels because you get all these different situations and you get dealers, and it helps both with you guys, exhibitors, understanding how dealers are working to improve their business or what they need, but especially the dealers in attendance, understanding that other dealers are going through what they're going through, and here's how they resolved or solved some of their problems.
Absolutely. I think that is the power of everybody getting together and attending these things.
Excellent. Well, Steve, this has been great. It's always good to talk to you. Now, tell people how they can look up you folks and also get signed up for those monthly webinars, because they're great. They're not boring. They're not long. They're just enough. They're bite-sized stuff that is really addressing the issues of the day on compliance.
So if you want to reach out to us to get on our webinar list, or we also put out a tip of the week every week. It could be about sales. It could be advertising. It could be collections, just different facets of the business. Just email us at info@ignitecp.com. Ignite Consulting Partners, ignitecp.com, and we'll put you on our list. And we have some companies, literally, they have all of their personnel on our distribution list, and then they decide, based on the topic, who's going to listen in a given month.
Yeah, we listen to you guys and talk to you guys all the time, so it's a great group. So again, Steve Levine, thank you from Ignite Consulting Partners. Thank you for what you do with the industry. Thank you for these things where you're not just displaying or being in the exhibit hall. You're actually working with dealers. You're moderating panels. You're serving on panels to help people understand, to navigate through this morass of compliance. And again, guys like you, companies like yours, are going to be pretty busy over the next year or two, I think. So I do appreciate you taking time to talk with us here at Used Car News.
Well, thank you for all your support over the years. Thanks to Used Car News. And we love this industry. We are staunch advocates of this industry, and we'll continue to fight for it.
Excellent. This has been the Used Car News Podcast, and we'll see you on the road sometime in the future there, Steve.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Competition is fierce in the used car arena, so how can you ensure that your pre-owned inventory stands above the rest? Success starts with the quality of your leads. Auto Trader for Independents offers products that help drive high-quality leads for independent dealers like you.
CarMax has reported its first quarter results for the period ending May 31st of this year. The company saw a 3.1% decrease in retail used unit sales and a 3.8% drop in comparable store sales compared to last year's first quarter. Wholesale units also declined by 8.3%. Despite these declines, CarMax delivered strong margins across retail, wholesale, and extended protection plans with record gross profits per unit in several categories. The company bought 314,000 vehicles from consumers and dealers, a drop of 8.6%, though purchases from dealers surged by 70.8%. CarMax Auto Finance reported a 7% increase in income to $147 million. CEO Bill Nash highlighted positive trends such as price declines, vehicle value stability, and growth in demand, expressing pride in the company's efforts to support future growth. Glenview Finance has introduced an e-contracting system to its credit builder subprime financing platform. This comprehensive paperless solution can fund deals in under an hour, enhancing efficiency and satisfaction for dealerships and consumers. The new system leverages the latest in fintech, providing seamless digital contract generation, customer verification, signing, and secure vaulting. Glenview Finance's e-contracting aims to streamline the vehicle financing process, making it faster and more convenient for all parties involved. In automotive news, wholesale used vehicle prices decreased by 0.3% from May and the first half of June, according to Manheim. The Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index fell to 196.8, down 8.5% from June 2023. Seasonal adjustments softened the monthly impact, with non-adjusted prices declining 1.6% from May and 9.5% year over year. Jeremy Robb, Senior Director at Cox Automotive, noted continued price declines from late May into early June, but highlighted higher sales conversion rates and decreased days supply, indicating strong buying demand. Thanks for listening to Used Car News Podcast. Each month, we'll bring you fast and reliable news that car dealers can rely on for this evolving industry. For a free subscription of Used Car News, please go to usedcarnews.com. This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. Make sure to share us on social media and like and follow wherever you get your podcasts.